Okay, we got big, exciting news. There is another Second Amendment case that the Supreme Court is going to hear. And I got to tell you, it's been an amazing few years because for decades, the Supreme Court didn't hear any Second Amendment cases. And now they're starting to hear them almost regularly. It's kind of an amazing thing. But something extremely interesting about this case is it's a local San Diego guy at the helm. The attorney is Alan Beck, and we've interviewed him before. I know you've heard his name, but what an amazing accomplishment this guy has on getting his case to the Supreme Court. So we wanted to have him on the show and talk to us about the Wolford case. So, Alan, you there?
I can hear you now.
Okay, great. So the Wolford case, you're the attorney on the Wolford case. First off, congratulations on the Supreme Court agreeing to take your case. I think that's an amazing thing. I was just saying we live in amazing times that the Supreme Court is actually taking Supreme Court cases, whereas, throughout the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, that just didn't even seem like a possibility. And now they're taking a series of cases, including your Wolford case. What are your thoughts about the Supreme Court in general and what they're doing with the Second Amendment?
Well, the Supreme Court has fairly clear-cut rules on why they'll grant the case. Here, there is a circuit conflict between the Second Circuit, the Third Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit. A circuit conflict is where appellate courts disagree on what the law should be on an issue of federal law. So here, the Second and Third Circuit have struck down what we call the vampire rule.
The vampire rule. Yeah. Explain the vampire rule. It's kind of funny. I don't know who coined that phrase, but it's kind of funny that they call it the vampire rule. Oh, really?
He's the man that coined it. And we call it the vampire rule because Hawaii law, along with the laws in a couple other states, make it so that in order to carry a firearm, even with the CCW, in a private business, the private business has to put up a sign saying guns allowed.
Right.
Or you have to otherwise get affirmative permission.
Right, which is in the movies and in comic books, a vampire can't come into your home unless they've been invited, which is why they call it the vampire rule. They're basically saying, hey, you horrible unwashed masses that are gun owners, you're not allowed in an establishment unless they specifically give you permission because you're such an unwanted, horrible person for being a gun owner. That's the general idea behind the vampire rule, right?
That's correct. And as a practical matter, virtually no businesses put up that sign. And that's not necessarily because they don't want you to carry in there. You're taking a real hit on your business by putting a sign up that says guns allowed. We have dozens of declarations from Maui businesses where this case originates out of that say we'd like people to carry. We're more than open to people exercising their Second Amendment rights, but we don't want to take the hit to the business, especially a place like Hawaii that is fueled by tourism. There's people from Japan and from Europe that get uncomfortable with a sign like that get put up.
I have a question, Alan. In addition to the potential discomfort and the people disagreeing and the potential loss of business, is there, by placing a sign, and I could be incorrect in my understanding, which is why I love to ask you this, is there any potential liability that they could receive should an incident occur had they have had that sign posted? Is that part of their decision to post or does not? Does it open them up to anything from a legal perspective?
I think that's something that they take into consideration. And that's a possibility. But, these laws are so new that issue is unsettled, whether they would actually be open themselves up to liability. And that's sort of the point. They're easily opening themselves up to a lawsuit, right? And, whether liability is going to be established, they'll still have spent tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on lawyers.
So this law is not only compelling this business to essentially what it's saying is hey, you can't do business with this, subset of people unless you publicly declare a political opinion that you have that is generally considered controversial. So unless you do declare, unless the government's compelling them to say, hey, this is where I stand on this political issue of firearms, and if you don't declare that, then you can't do business with gun owners is essentially. But then above and beyond that, there may even be, and this hasn't been tested. We don't even know, but there may be even additional liability with the idea of people not being armed or whatever. If the business is expressly giving permission, then there may actually be some kind of liability. If something happens or someone isn't protected or someone is hurt or something like that. Are those the two biggest ideas behind this case?
That's correct. And more to the point, this effectively eviscerates the right to carry firearms that's protected by Peru. Because businesses just simply won't put up this sign. So you can't carry 99% of businesses. And if you can't carry in private property open to the public, you pretty much can't carry in your day-to-day life.
I'm curious.
I mean, every day you go to some type of private property. Imagine if you can't use the restroom, while driving. You can't go to a restaurant. That's it.
So I'm curious. Alan. I know that this case here is specifically Hawaii, correct? And we did have the same vampire, the vampire invite as part of our SB2. Now, currently, we're in kind of this middle ground with SB2. We are awaiting a lower court to hear it. I'm curious if this goes forward and you are successful in Hawaii. Do you feel that this could have any impact, or would this have any effect for us here in California as well? Is there anything? How can this?
This will impact the whole country because it's in front of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Right.
So if I win in front of the Supreme Court, then all the other vampire rules will be struck down.
No, so, correct, absolutely. I love how the Second Amendment case through the Supreme Court have that nationwide impact. But as far as will it really?
So it only affects the vampire rule.
Correct.
It won't get rid of other sensitive areas.
I guess I didn't correctly word my question.
So it's a very correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a very focused lawsuit. It's not necessarily going to affect what is or is not a sensitive area. It's just that one vampire rule of saying, hey. The only way, and it's basically private property. A private property, we can ban guns on the government can ban guns on private property unless the property owner makes a political statement publicly. That's the focus of this whole thing, right?
Yeah, that's the only thing it will directly impact. However, by ruling in my favor, at least hopefully, the Supreme Court is going to establish methodology that's going to make it much easier to go after the other sensitive places.
Yeah.
Because in order to evaluate the vampire rule, it has to tell the courts how you're going to evaluate sensitive places locations. And, one of the big things is the lower courts have been justifying the sensitive places by using historical laws from the late 19th century. And that's something that goes against what the Supreme Court was saying in Bruin. So we're going to ask for a ruling that says historical analogs have to be from the founding era.
Oh, wow. Well, and the whole thing, I mean, one of the things, about these Second Amendment cases at every level is every positive ruling, every ruling in our favor of the Second Amendment reaffirms that the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. Could you imagine if they said, hey, look, you can't let any Presbyterians in your business unless you specifically say we're okay with Presbyterians? You know what I mean? Or imagine, even something, even more ridiculous. If you've ever had an abortion, you're not allowed in my business unless I specifically say you're allowed in my business. And I think that other, religion and heritage and, other political subjects have been discussed so much, and they've won in court, and they've changed public opinion so much, and they've been the center of so many different political campaigns that we think of it as completely ridiculous that somebody would say, hey, if you're a certain religion, I have to give you permission to come into our, we wouldn't even think of that. It's unthinkable, and it should be unthinkable with the Second Amendment too. But what we're in right now is we're in the middle of establishing, that exact same attitude and making sure that the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. We're right in the middle of that fight. 20, 30, 40 years from now, they're going to look back on Wolford and Bruin and some of these other cases and go, okay, that's what really, truly changed culture. And it's going to be so... At least the goal is that if gun ownership and carrying for self-defense is going to be so acceptable that it would be unthinkable to treat gun owners differently than the general population, which is what they're doing with this vampire rule. We're kind of in this golden age, or I'm not even sure how to phrase it, Alan, but we're definitely in the middle of a historic fight when it comes to self-defense.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We're more of a pioneering age. We're trying to establish the framework to normalize the Second Amendment as any other constitutional right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of threshold questions that still need to be answered. Whereas in the context of the First Amendment, we've got 120 years of established jurisprudence. So I've done a good deal of First Amendment litigation. And whenever you're doing a First Amendment case, they're pretty nuanced issues because the big issues have already been answered. Whereas in the Second Amendment context, the big questions haven't been answered yet.
That's phenomenal. So what do you think, what's the everybody wants to know the timeline. Everybody wants it to happen tomorrow. What do you think the timeline is for the Wolford case in the Supreme Court?
November 17th, I'll be filing a opening brief with the Supreme Court. About a month and a half later, the state of Hawaii will file their brief. Then I'll finally file a reply brief. Probably in late January, February, I'll be arguing from the U.S. Supreme Court. And then in sometime before June, the court will issue its ruling.
Wow. Yeah, June. That's usually when they come out, right around that time. There's something I want to tell folks about Alan. I've known Alan for a few years, and one of the big reasons I know Alan is because we're both here in San Diego. And I got to tell you, I never imagined there is so much Second Amendment stuff going through San Diego. And Alan is a perfect example of that, and Alan's a big reason for some of that. Alan, you were raised in San Diego. You went to college in San Diego. You went to law school in San Diego. and you started fighting for the Second Amendment here in San Diego as an attorney. And I want to emphasize to people that I know you've gotten a little bit of help here and there, and certainly some of the big groups are friendly towards you, but you're doing this on your own. You're not funded by a big, huge, organization. And that's not knocking any of the organizations. It's just that you decided, hey, I'm doing this on my own. I'm fighting. I'm fighting this. A lot of the costs coming right out of your pocket. A lot of it is, you're rolling up your own sleeves and just saying, hey, I'm doing this thing. You're not getting some big fat check from some of the big organizations, which makes this.
No, I've taken no money for this case. If I win, I'll get some money. I'll try and force the state of Hawaii to pay my attorney's fees.
Yeah.
But my clients are working class people, that've stepped up to take on this unconstitutional law. And, I take the financial risk.
Which is unbelievable. I mean, and you have a very rich history of winning when it comes to Second Amendment cases, don't you?
Yeah, I've won a few dozen Second Amendment cases. I've
I don't know if there's
He's
another.
he's so humble.
I don't know if there's another.
Alan.
I don't know if there's another attorney out there that can say they've won a few dozen Second Amendment cases. That's phenomenal.
You're a rock star. Thank you.
Yeah, I've tried to focus on issues that I really think that I can win on. The major groups, the benefit of having a lot of funding is they can go for the home run cases, like the AR-15 cases.
Yeah.
Where there's not a high level of, the odds are you're not going to win that, right? But you can take that risk. I find issues that affect, the working class people that, tend to be ridiculous. For example, on the Big Island, they were making people waive their attorney-client privilege in order to get CCW. Under the working theory that if you had a really good attorney, maybe you really did it. So you got off, but they had a right to look through your attorney files to see if there was evidence you actually were the sort of person that shouldn't have a firearm, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and you're hitting singles, and that's how you're winning the game, which is phenomenal. But one of the reasons I wanted you to come on the show is talk about this, and I wanted to reintroduce you to our listeners, but then also make sure that people understood exactly what Wolford was about. And we're going to have a link that's been set up that this is a fundraiser for Alan and for this lawsuit. So if you ever wondered like, hey, gee, I really want to give to a case, but I don't want the money to go, get diluted in some way or whatever. No, this link, the money goes directly to this case, to fighting this case. It doesn't come through San Diego County Gun Owners. It doesn't come through another organization. This is going directly to the case. So we're going to have that link. And I got to tell you, if you're out there thinking to yourself that the Second Amendment sure is important, I wish people were fighting for it. Great. This is your opportunity. Throw $100 down. Anybody that owns a gun and has ammo, you got $100 in your pocket to give to an attorney who's busting his hump to get a case to the Supreme Court.
Someone with passion for it, proven track record.
There you go.
The briefing at the Supreme Court is relatively costly, right? Because you have to pay for right? And so that's the additional thing we were trying to get paid for. And, there's going to be quite a few additional costs associated with just simply practicing on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So, I'm hoping to get some of those costs, taken care of.
There you go. So, okay, so the timeline is you'll probably actually argue somewhere around February. You'll probably get a decision somewhere around June. In the scope of things, that's 5 minutes from now. June of 2026 is 5 minutes from now. What else do you want people to know about the Wolford case or what's going on in Second Amendment in general? What else do you think is real important for listeners to know?
Well, I think that right now people need to be active at the grassroots level because these cases take years to litigate. And I tell my guys in Hawaii the same thing, that it's a lot easier to go to the legislature and stop these laws from getting enacted
Yeah.
than for me or another attorney to spend 3, 4, 5 years of their lives to try and get the law struck down in court.
Yeah.
And, you have to get involved,
Yeah. Ounce of
writing the
prevention.
letters,
Right? The ounce of
sending the
prevention.
emails.
Yeah, send the emails. Show up. We have all kinds in San Diego, we have all kinds of volunteer opportunities. I do want to send a big special thank you to Jason Wolford and Allison Wolford and Adam Kasprinsky, I'm sorry. And then the Hawaii Firearms Coalition for being plaintiffs on this. This is fantastic of you guys to step up and do that. It's actually amazing to me, Alan, how many times I hear people like, oh, man, I want to do something for the Second Amendment, whatever. And one of the things that we do is we help find plaintiffs for different cases, and it's amazingly difficult to find people to say, okay, I'll put my name down. We're not even asking people to, cut a check. We just need plaintiffs who are being affected so that, we can have a lawsuit. And it's amazingly difficult to get somebody to say, okay, I'll step up and put my name on this lawsuit. So I just wanted to take a second and thank Jason and Allison and Adam and, of course, all the fine people at Hawaii Firearms Coalition for helping Alan out on this, and thank you, Alan, for doing such great things for the Second Amendment. And you're doing wonderful work, man. I'm really, really proud to call you a friend, and I'm so happy that you're working so hard on this. And it's just amazing how dedicated you are.
Well, thank you very much for your support, Mike. And, I look forward to bringing Help to Win to San Diego.
There you go. That'll be awesome. Okay, fantastic. We will let everybody know as soon as we know more. And thank you again, Alan. This is so fantastic. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep. All right. Take care. So there you go. Alan Beck, the attorney on the Wolford case, which will be heard by the Supreme Court of the United States, which I can't imagine this isn't going to go our way.
I agree.
It's such a horrible law, and it just seems so crystal clear, and it seems like we have the makeup on the bench right now. Mm-hmm. My hope is that they will strike down this vampire law,
right?
Not across the nation in Hawaii and then of course California, but then they'll give some serious guidance. The strength of the Bruin case was, hey, get rid of good cause, get rid of the subjectivity of CCWs,
follow the Constitution,
Right.
Right.
But then the other part was, and oh, by the way, this is how you're supposed to rule on other Second Amendment cases, with the history and text and tradition. So it wasn't just, hey, get rid of that law. It was this guidance. And I'm really hoping Alan, alluded to it, that I'm hoping that the decision will do the same thing for sensitive areas, for quote unquote sensitive areas.
Right. That's it. And thank you for picking up and fixing my question. That was actually exactly what I was trying to get at. I just think.
Yeah. Is this going to help get rid of sensitive areas?
Correct.
It may not, and it sounds like to me, and I don't know, I don't want to put words in Alan's mouth. He's smarter than I am, but I think what he was saying was, it probably won't strike down all these sensitive areas. California is just everything's a sensitive area.
Right.
It probably won't strike it down, but it'll give guidance to what really truly can and cannot be called a sensitive area. I think that's the hope.
Absolutely. And one thing that wasn't mentioned too is if you carry a collapsible asp or baton, you're excited about that case. That was Alan as well.
Yeah, it was.
That was Alan.
Yeah, knives and batons, and
he's got a passion for the good things, and when he takes a case, I think it's a really promising. A really good, promising aspect that he's going to take the things that he knows he can win.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, the Second Amendment has a sensitive area in my heart.
It's a sensitive space.
And you don't have to ask permission to come in. All right, cool. Well, awesome. Let's again, we're going to have the link, pitch in, give a couple of bucks, whatever you can do. But I got to tell you, $100 is a nice round number. Imagine if we could get 100 people to give $100 just to get this case over the finish line. That just seems so doable. So please click on the link, give $100, goes directly to this case, and fantastic. There you go. Hey, thanks for watching Gun Owners Radio. I hope you loved that clip. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on social media, and check out our website at gunownersradio.com.